Hi everyone and welcome to a new video on the CBI channel. In this tutorial series we're creating a Django and React login/authentication system. This is not the first video in this series, in fact we've already done 4 before, in which we've set up our Django backend, our React.js frontend, we've created a custom user model, and we have already enabled page navigation and created a navigation menu for our frontend. In this video, we're going to continue and we're going to be formatting and styling our login and registration page so that it's completely ready for creating users. And to do that, we are going to follow 5 main tasks. We're going to start off at the login page and we're going to be formatting the background of the entire page and creating a form area with different components. Next, we're going to be adding some Material UI forms to our project, and we're going to populate our form areas on the login page with the different components that we need for submitting different data. As the last step, we're also going to replicate the same logic for the registration page, but there the forms will be a little bit different. So let's get started. So this is our current login page, and we're going to be making some changes to make this look a little bit more nice. The first thing that what I want to do is set a background color so that the entire canvas of our login page is completely covered. So inside of our project, we're going to go to the login.jsx file, and inside of these divs on the top, I'm going to give it a class name, and that class name is going to be equal to my background. And this class name is going to help us to format this div in the way that we would like. But for that to work, we first need to make an import, because we're going to write some CSS for this class name, but we of course need to import the CSS file to make sure that it works. So on the top of the file, I'm going to do import, and in there we will specify that we want to import our app.css file. And you can see that one right here, and it should now be empty. Next, I'm going to copy over the my background, and I'm going to go to the app.css file, and I'm going to do a dot and then specify the name of my background, because this means that we want to format a class called my background, and that is the case for us. Now, the first thing that I will specify is the width of the div, what I would like to see. And I'm going to put it to 100 VW, and that is just going to be equal to 100%. And for height, I'm going to do exactly the same. This is going to be 100 and then VH. I'm also going to add some other things. I'm going to say that display is going to be equal to flex, which is going to make it a little bit more flexible when we make the page bigger or smaller. And I want to align all of the items that are going to be inside of my background in the center, because in the middle of this page, I want to have a white box where we can create all of the stuff for our login. I'm also going to set justify content to the center, which is going to horizontally centralize everything that we do. And to see if something is actually happening, I also want to set a background color. And for now, I'm just going to set it to blue so we can see whether it works. So let's save our changes and go to our app to see whether everything is formatted correctly. And when we open our app, we do see the blue square, but you can see that we still have some kind of a margin around the edges. So let's go back and fix that. And we can fix that inside of our index.css file, because what I clearly saw is when I do inspect and I go to the different elements, you can see that HTML and the body kind of make up that white square at the top. So we need to change those in order to make sure that everything works. Now in our main.jsx, this is actually where we load our app inside of the index.html, which means that if we manipulate the index.css, it should work correctly. So in there, I'm going to specify HTML, body. And in there, I'm going to specify that the height should be 100%. And I'm going to define the margin as 0. And also set the padding to 0. And let's make sure that it are semicolons like this. And let's see what we see on our page right now. Okay, and we're now returned. You can see that there is no white space anymore. Also, there are no scroll bars anymore. So the background is now completely covered in this beautiful blue square. Now, I don't want my background to be just a simple blue color. Normally, I would go for either an image, but I currently don't have one, or I would go for a gradient to make the background a little bit more exciting. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing right now. So on Google, I've looked for a gradient maker, and you have a tool called CSS Gradient. And in there, you're able to create your own gradients for your page. Now, of course, you can go about and create your own beautiful selection. For example, I can say that I want to have something with purple and blue. Can get out the green and kind of play around with how that should work, and also even spin around the different areas to create my own background. What you can also do is click on backgrounds and pick a few from different parts where it has already created some gradients for you. So you can do whatever you want and easily copy over the CSS commands to make sure that it works for your background. In my case, I'm going to go with this with a little bit of purple and a little bit of blue. Might change the color of the blue a little bit, something like this. And then I can just simply copy over this code, go to my code and go to the app.css again, and then replace my background color with the commands from that website. And let's save it and see what we get as a result. So you can see now that it looks a little bit different as before. It's a little bit more exciting, and for now this will work fine for our use case. Next thing that I want to do is I want to create a white box in the middle where we're going to have all of the different content. Because in there I want to have some forms, a title that says we can log in, a button that allows us to log in, and also a text that says if you are not registered already, please go to the register page. So inside of my login.jsx file, I'm going to do an import, and I'm going to import box from @MUI material. And this is kind of functions as a div. It's very similar, but I prefer using the material UI components. And I'm going to give this also a class name. And that class name is going to be equal to white box. And let's also put this in camel case like this. And now we can again take this command and do some formatting in our app.css file like this. So the first thing that I'm going to specify is that the background color is going to be white. We will have a padding of 20 px, so we have a little bit of extra space around the edges. And I also want the minimum width of this box to be equal to 300 pixels, just to make sure that it doesn't become too small if you make the screen smaller, or whether you are on a mobile device. I'm going to set the height of the box to 70% of the total screen. And I'm going to set the width to 30%. So it's always going to be 30% of the screen, and as a minimum 300 pixels wide. As a last thing, I'm also going to set a border. And I'm just going to do a border of 1 pixel. And that's going to be a solid border. And it's going to be a little bit of a gray color with the color code 333. So let's save this and check out what we get on the screen. Okay, and we can now see on our screen that we have a white box in the center of our screen. Now I actually think that it's still quite wide, so I'm going to make a small change to that. Maybe we set the width to 25% instead of 30, and that actually looks a little bit better. So this is going to be the place where we are going to specify a title, a few forms, a button, and then a link to the register page. And before we actually can populate that, I want to create different areas in this form where we're going to put those things. So in our login.jsx file, I'm going to again create a few new boxes within our white box. And we're just going to, for now, write down what's going to be in there. So I'm just going to give this a class name, and that class name is going to be equal to item box. And this one is going to hold the title of the box. And then I would like to have another one underneath it, which would have a form with the email. I would like to have another one with a form with a password. I would like to have another one which is going to hold a button. And then I would have a last one on the bottom of it that is going to hold a link to register page. Because those are all of the components that we would most likely need when we build a login form. So again, copy over the class name, and we're going to format this a little bit in our app.css file. So first thing that I'm going to state here is that the display is going to be flex. I always want the content to be in the center, so justify content will be center. I also want to align all of the items in those boxes in the center. And the width of it also needs to be 100%, because I want to have it the full width, because this padding is going to make sure that we have some space around the edges as well. For now, I'm going to set a background color of red, so we can clearly identify these different boxes. And I'm going to set the height of each box for now to 100 pixels, because it doesn't have any real content at the moment. So let's see what it looks like when we go to the screen. And this is what it looks like. And you can actually see that we have these different boxes within our form, which actually fit into this form quite well. So that is nice. So the first thing that we need to change is the title. And in here, it's just going to be text. You can also add an image. But for now, I'm just going to go with login for Auth app. However, if I want to format this, and I'm going to add it into a separate box like this. So I'm going to say login for Auth app, and I'm going to give this a class name of title. And I'm going to copy that and go to our app.css. And in there, I'm going to specify that the font size is going to be 30 pixels. I can also specify that I want the color of these fonts to be free, which is kind of a grayish. And let's now see what we have. And there you go. It now says login for Auth app. And we want to create are the forms for our email and the forms for our password. But in order for us to do that, we first need to enter those forms inside of our project. And we're again going to do that by using Material UI. And Material UI is a components library that has ready-to-use components that we can just copy and paste into our project. And if we click on Get Started on the Material UI documentation, on the left-hand side you can see that we have components. And we have a bunch of different input components, including some buttons, but also including a few fields. And one of those fields is a text field. And that's very convenient because we actually would like a text field into our login form. And for our form, we are just going to pick a very basic text field, which is outlined and is going to function like that. So what we're going to do for this basic text field is I'm going to expand the code right here and just copy over everything that is in here right now. And we're going to go back to our code, and inside of the components folder, I'm going to add a new folder, and that's going to be called forms. And in there, I'm going to add a new file, and I'm going to call it my textfield.jsx. And in here, we paste all of the code. I'm going to change the name to my text field. And in the example, it of course has 3 forms. So I can delete the bottom 2 because I'm only interested in the main one. So in here, we delete the bottom 2. I also see a box here for the forms. I don't actually want that, so I can get rid of the box as well. And just like that, we have a text field included. Let's also delete the import that we don't need. And we're going to make a small change right here, because right now the label is hard-coded. So when I put this form inside of my login form, it's going to set the label always to outlined. But maybe I want to use this form a couple of times, and then it's better to have this as a variable or as a parameter. So I'm going to change this label, and I'm going to call it label. And now on top of the field, I'm going to define a constant And in there I specify a label, and it's going to be equal to props. And we're going to pass this prop into the text field. And now when we take this text field to our login form, we can set the variable for label, and it will return that inside of this text field. And that's going to be really convenient because then we can reuse the form. So into our login page, we can import our my text field. And I can now say in this one right here that we have my text field, and we need to make it a block like this. And in there, I can say that label is going to be equal to email, like this. And we should now see a text field when we go back to the browser. And we're back in our browser, and we can now see an email field popping up right there in this nice red square. However, the width is not completely right. So let's go back, go to my text field.jsx, and let's give this text field a class name, which is going to be equal to my form. And then I also want to import the CSS file here. So I'm going to do -- or // and then app.css, which imports the CSS file. And now we can use this my form in the app.css file, and I'm just going to set my form to a width of 100%. And hopefully that will now span the entire width of the screen except for the margin. And you can now see that the email spans the entire box like so. So that works the way that we expect. Now we also need a password form. Now we can use a standard text form, but I don't want the passwords of the user to be exposed. So if you scroll down in the documentation, you can actually see that Material UI has a password field. You can see it right here that if you type, it will not show the values. And if you then click on the I, it will show the password. And that's very convenient. So same here, I'm going to show the code for these input environments, copy over everything. I'm going to create a new file in the forms folder stating my pass field. And I'm just going to paste in everything. And if we go back, then we see that I need the third form right here because all of those other ones I'm not really that interested in. So let's first find it. Let's just delete the first two. Here we have a text field, that one can go, and then here we have another form control field, that one can also go. And that means that this form control one should be our field. And then this one can go completely because those are all other forms that we don't really need. Okay. I also see a box in here and a div. Don't really want that. Just going to delete it. And also need to delete that on the bottom then. And this should be all right. And also on the top, you can see that all the things that are grayed out are the things that we don't actually need anymore. So I'm just going to delete those to stop me from distracting me. Form helper text we also don't need, and also the text field has been deleted. Let's see, the function of show password and all those kind of things is still used, and also the handle mouse down password is also still used. So I'm going to leave that as is, not going to mess with that one per se. Now here you can also see that it defines the name of the form right here, and possibly also right here. So what I'm going to do, similarly to our text field, I'm just going to copy over this command. We're going to create a constant for the props. So put it somewhere right here and pass in the props inside of here. And actually also change this field to my pass field. And okay, so the props have been passed, and now we can reference that label in this text field right here. And maybe also here. Let's just also do that to be sure. And now we make sure that we can also reuse this one. Let's say that we have other use cases where we want to hide the form. We can perfectly do that. Okay, and this should actually work like this. So back to our login form, and let's import my pass field from my pass field. And same as what we did for the email, we're going to put the code block here of my pass field. And we can specify what we want to see for the value of label. And in this case, just the word password will suffice. Let's see where we are at once we go to the browser. Okay, and we now see the password field. I can successfully click that icon and it works. But also here we can see that the width is not set to 100%. So we go back to our pass fields, and I think the reason for that could be the form control. It also specifies some styling here. So I'm just going to delete this stuff right there. And I'm going to set the class name equal to my form. And that is the same one that we've just set for the my text field, like right here. And now something in here should change to 100% width. So let's see if that is okay. Yeah, and we can now see that the password is also fully in the same width as the email field. So that's quite nice. Now, if a user has filled in the email and the password, we also would like to have a button right here that says that they can log in. So luckily, Material UI also has components for that. So if we go a little bit up, you can see that we have a button. And in here, we can have a text button, a contain button, or an outlined button. You also have quite some variances right here. But actually, for us, we just can have a basic contain button that would work for me. So similar as before, I'm going to expand this code. I'm going to copy over the entire code. And in the forms field, I'm going to add a new file called mybutton.jsx. In here, we paste the entire code. Now we only need the second button right here because we want to have a contained version. And we can then state on the top that it's my button. Similarly, as the text field, if I want to reuse this later on, I might want to set a prop for this particular button and then say that it is, then add a label to it through the props, because maybe I want this title to change. So I'm going to say label right here so we can change the way that the button is going to operate. And this stack spacing, I don't really need it. For me, that is completely fine. And also in this case, I'm just going to set a class name equal to my form, which is just going to set this button to 100%. So let's delete this import that we don't use, save it, and take it into the login. So in our login page, again, getting repetitive, we can do import my button. And I'm just going to go to the place where we should have this button and say my button. And we also need to define the label for there, which is going to be equal to login, because that's what we want to do. And you can see that we now have a nice blue button over here. The last thing that I want to add is a link that is going to go to our register page, because maybe users come to this page and they are going to be like, well, I still need to register myself before I can log in. And that is completely fine because we're going to facilitate that. And to do that, on the top, we can make an import, and we can import link from React Router DOM. And we already installed React Router DOM in one of the previous tutorials. And now we can add a component in here called link. We can say that the link needs to go to /register. And actually, we need to close it off like this. Link needs to have a slash here and not at the end. And the text for this link is going to be no account yet. Please register. And now we have a link, and if I click this link and follow it, I will arrive at the register page. Okay, so our form is now done. Let's get rid of this ugly red background first of all, so we can see kind of what it looks like without that on there. So on the app.css file, I'm going to remove the background color of red. And you can see that we have a nice and clean login form. Now, the only thing that I would like to change at this moment is the color of this button right here. And you can do whatever you want with it. And to change the color and the format of the button, we need to go back to the mybutton.jsx file. And I'm just going to change the class form from myform to mybutton to make sure that it is distinct from the myform one. Then we can go to the CSS file, app.css. In there, I'm going to do a comma after my form, and I'm going to state that my button also needs to have a width of 100%. And separately to that, I'm going to say that the background color of my button can be red. And I'm going to say important, because otherwise it might not override that. And if I now go back to the code, our button is red. Well, I don't really like that as much anyway. So what we can also do as an example, I can also copy over the statement from our background and set those to important. And let's copy this one over and also put it right there. And now when we go back, the button is also in the same gradient as our background. Not really the biggest fan of that one either, because I like my button just to be like in one generic color. So what I'm going to do is just remove this and go to the color picker, and I want it to be a little bit bluish. It can be a little bit darker, maybe still even a little bit lighter than this, and now it looks like this. And for now this is fine, so I'm just going to leave it the way it is. And this is our login form complete. Now for the register form, we're going to do exactly the same thing. But the thing that we might want to change is the title, add another password field, and change the text on our buttons. So what I'm going to do for the login page, I'm going to copy over all of this code, go to the register page and just paste it in, and then change the export default to register, and also do that on the top. I'm going to change the title of the box to user registration. And the forms, it can still be email, it can still be password, but after the normal password, I would like to have a field that confirms the password. So confirm password like this. And in the button, I don't want the text to say login, but I want to say register. And as the last one, I would like to have the link in here, but it needs to set it to the login page, and we can then change that text as well. And we can change that to already registered. Please login. Kind of the other way around it was before. And now if we click on this link and go to the register page, you can see that we have the same logic, and it doesn't quite fit on this screen, unfortunately. So let's go back to our app.css. So to fix that, we can change the height of those boxes to something a little bit better, like 80, for example. And when we now go to our registration page, you can see that things fit on the canvas a little bit better. And even when we go to the login, it is nice that the title and the first two forms are going to be exactly in the same place as before. There will just be a little bit more space on the bottom. But actually, yeah, I like this for now. And that is actually all that we are going to be doing today. In this video, we have formatted our login and registration pages, including the forms and all of the components that we will need to create users and log in. In the next video, we're going to continue and we're going to complete the registration of users by connecting our front end to our back end for the creation of users. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, because that really helps me out. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye.